think we are good to start. If more participants join, then they'll find us along the way. Hello, everyone, and welcome from wherever you are joining us today, whether from Africa or Asia or other parts of the world. We are very happy to be having this session today. So, my name is Sinetemba Mtetwa, and I'll be moderating today's session. For those joining us for the very first time today, welcome. This webinar is part of the Network Cities platform, which is convened by ICLE Africa under the AfriFood Links project. And this is a space really where we come together and cities are able to share the work that they're doing on the ground. And we use the space to reflect on what's working in our cities, what's not, and also what we can learn from each other in practice. So for today's session, we are going to be focusing on school feeding programs, which is one of the most widely used ways in which countries respond to food insecurity in children. And also it supports learning, nutrition, as well as the overall well-being of children. So globally, we've seen that these programs are growing quite a lot, with the World Food Program reporting that an estimate of over 466 million children receive school meals, which really shows that school meals are quite central in different urban contexts. At the same time, we know that cities and governments are dealing with quite a lot of other pressures, from rising food insecurity, economic constraints, to the ongoing challenge of making these programs more sustainable. And so today's conversation is more about, shifting from policy to practice, just looking at school feeding, not just as an idea, but something that is actually happening and being implemented on the ground in different urban contexts. So we'll be looking at the different models and partnerships and realities that exist on the ground. So what we are hoping to get out of today's session is quite simple. We want to be able to learn from each other. We need to want to know what is working, what's not working, and how can we move forward. So for today's session, we'll be focusing on two different contexts. We'll be focusing in Africa and we'll also be focusing in Asia, both in which are approaching school feeding in different ways. In Africa, for example, there's an example of a parent-led model, and in Asia, one that focuses on school gardens. So to start off, we're going to start in Africa, more of a regional context where we'll have Fru to just give us a background on what is happening in Africa. And she'll be drawing from a project that is convened by ICLE Africa called the School Food for Cities. And then we'll deep dive into Mbeya in Tanzania, which focuses on parent-led school feeding models. So a little bit about Fru. Dr. Fru Wanka leads the Children and School Nutrition pillar at the African Food Center at ICLE Africa. She's also the principal investigator on the School Food for Cities project, which is being implemented in Tanzania, Uganda, and Zambia. She's also been working for over a decade on food systems, nutrition, and sustainable development across African cities. Fru, I'm going to hand over to you to take us through. Thank you.
Thank you, Sine. I just want to share my slide quickly. Please confirm on your side if the slides are moving. Eh?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As Sina rightly said, I'm Fru Wanka, and my presentation today is on strengthening school feeding through collaboration, lessons from Arusha and Mbale. The structure of my presentation is as follows. We have a brief overview of school feeding in Africa, why collaboration matters, and then case study from Arusha and Bale, and lessons across the two cities, and key takeaway. So initially, school feeding in Africa served as a channel where North America and Europe disposed their surplus commodities in the form of food aid or food for work. And this was highly criticized as distorting local markets and also undermining domestic production. In response to these, local procurement was then introduced, which was later formalized as homegrown school feeding program to align school feeding program with local agricultural systems and promote sustainable market-based solutions. Now, over the years, we have seen that there's a growing recognition of the importance of school feeding, not only as a developmental intervention in improving the education and well-being of children, but also as a driver to systematic change. And now, this growing recognition, we can see it reflecting on the number of children that are now receiving school meals in schools. We see that the number of children receiving school meals increased from approximately 38 million in 2013 to approximately 87 million in 2004, based on the WFP report. But again, despite this increase in the number of children receiving school meals, we can see that Africa still represents the lowest in terms of coverage, in terms of the school feeding program, compared to other regions of the world. And in terms of operationalizing or implementing this program, we see that there are variations in terms of program implementation, which reflects the continent's programmatic diversity. Now, in terms of financing, there are two dominant financial models. We have countries that heavily rely on donor funding. For instance, we have Cameroon, we have the Democratic Republic of Cameroon that heavily rely on external donor funding. And we also have countries like South Africa, we have Benin, we have Eswatini, Lesotho, Zambia, that have government-led national school feeding programs in the form of homegrown school feeding programs. And you realize that for most of these countries that are government-led, they have a policy that governs the implementation of this program. Now there is that growing momentum, an initiative that is being done by the School Meal Coalition, and also the African Union is pushing its member countries towards a nationally owned and sustainable school meal systems. And that is why now you'll be hearing about regenerative school meal. And that is because they want school meals not only to impact on the education, on education or the well-being of children, but also to impact on the environment, to impact on the local economy. And that is why we see now there's that high drive in terms of a national owned and sustainable school meal systems. But again, in Africa, the implementation of this is also hindered by the lack of cross-departmental collaboration. We don't really see collaborations in terms of the education, the health department, or the agriculture department collaborating with schools to ensure that the program is implemented efficiently and effectively. Now, why do we need collaboration? We need the national government to set policies and standards. We need the local governments to implement this policy and monitor the program. We need schools to identify and manage the operations of these school feeding programs. We need farmers and suppliers to supply quality food. We need parents to also participate either in the school gardens or also to support in terms of providing some of the finances that are needed to run these programs. And we need developmental organizations and CSOs to provide also financial support or technical support. And the reason why we need all of this is because no single actor can achieve a sustainable school feeding program without the other actors coming together. And therefore, collaboration across sectors influence what ultimately goes on the plate of every child. If the government does not set standards, If the local government does not monitor this program, we realize that schools might not provide quality food for children because they are not being monitored. If the government does not also set standards on kind of food that farmers need to produce, the farmers will not produce high quality food and supply to schools. And therefore, we need all hands on the deck to ensure that the food that is given to kids is of quality and nutritious. Now we are going to draw lessons from the School Food for Cities project, and the School Food for Cities project is a project that is being led by ICLI Africa in collaboration with Ricoto East Africa and the University of Zambia. And the primary objective of this project is to use food procurement to improve local governance, food and nutrition security, livelihood opportunity, and promote environmental and community resilience. This project is being implemented in 3 cities. We have Arusha in Tanzania, Kitwe in Zambia, and Mbale in Uganda. And our case study will focus on Arusha and Mbale because these 2 cities are mostly parent-led, and there are a lot of challenges that we observed while we were doing our data collection. So for Arusha and Mbale, the type of school feeding model there is mostly parent-led. So the parents are the ones that contribute. Or there's a national guideline that says school feeding. The children must have food in school, but the responsibility is left in the hands of parents. Parents are the ones to contribute. So in most of the schools, parents can either contribute either cash or kind. But again, now there is a bottleneck with respect to this because some parents don't even have the income to contribute. Others, they don't contribute because they don't trust the system. And in terms of the procurement committee that decides the kind of food that they need to procure, it's mostly made up of teachers and parents. We have limited collaborations from the other department, and that is why we realize that the menu that is being designed by the committee, there is no nutritional professional that is involved in it. And we realize that the money that they have can be used to purchase high quality nutritious food. But again, because those who are designing the menu don't really have this knowledge, they end up buying what they feel the money can get. And on the other hand, also, because they don't trust the system that is collecting the money, we have very few parents who contribute. And remember, when you buy in bulk, the prices are much moderate compared to when you buy very little quantity. And therefore, we also have the issue where there's, in terms of the local government role, we have very limited government role in the school feeding program. And this can be justified from the fact that you are not contributing. And therefore, you cannot really influence much in terms of what the parents or what the school committee will procure. But again, they have the mandate to supervise and monitor the program. But this is rarely done. Imagine that the local government does not monitor. There's no proper or formal monitoring system. Schools will do whatever they like. They'll provide whatever they can provide, irrespective of whether it is of high quality or not. And therefore, we need everyone on board. We need the local government. We need the schools to also have transparent systems that can also push parents to contribute. We also need collaboration across the different sectors, the agriculture department, the nutrition department, to also help the school committees to be able to design menus that can match the budget, but also provide quality and nutritious food in the schools. Now, in terms of policy, Arusha and Mbale don't have Uganda does not really have a national school feeding policy. They are in the process of developing one. Likewise, Tanzania currently they don't have a national school feeding policy. But what we observed in Mbale is that head teachers will, through the PTA, will ask parents to contribute. They will agree in the PTA meeting. But again, when they are asked now to contribute this money, some of them now go to the RDC, the resident district commissioner, to report the head teachers that they are asking for money. And now these head teachers are being humiliated. Now ask yourself, as a head teacher, I'll play a short video that shows some of this. So this video is just showing like head teachers and teachers who are being humiliated for sending children away because of PTA fees. Now imagine being a head teacher and you're being humiliated in this way. Will you be able now to ask parents to contribute for the school feeding? And now how then do we achieve our targets if teachers are being harassed in this way? So the lesson that we learned is schools are the cornerstone of successful parent-led school feeding programs. And why are they? The schools are the ones that collect those finances. The schools are the ones that determined which child is in need of the school feeding. Likewise, if the schools don't have a transparent and accountable systems, parents won't be able to contribute. And if parents cannot contribute, then we cannot implement school feeding in schools. And therefore, we need a transparent and accountable systems for the parent-led model to really work. Then again, in Bale and in Arusha, we realize that there is no bylaw or any policy that can reinforce the role of local governments and school administrators. And therefore, this also impacts on the implementation of the program. Likewise, we also need collaboration across key departments. We need the government to come together. We need the Ministry of Education. We need the Ministry of Health and Nutrition. We also need the agriculture sector. We also need parents. We also need all key stakeholder farmers to come together to design menus and also to help in the implementation of these programs. If we work in silos, then we won't be able to achieve the goal of sustainable school feeding program and also to reach many children that we want to reach. Now, my key takeaway is sustainable school feeding is not achieved by schools alone. It requires coordinated action from governments, communities, farmers, suppliers, parents, development partners, children themselves, because they are the ones who benefit. So they need to tell us whether the food they are receiving is of quality or not, whether they like the food or whether it should be improved. So they are also needed in achieving a sustainable school feeding program. Thank you for your attention and don't forget to eat right. Over to you, Cine.
Thank you so much, Fru, for that presentation that you have just given us. I think this was a reminder again, the importance of having all hands on deck to ensure that really school feeding programs are sustainable. I think it also highlighted how important it is to have a strong monitoring system so that we can ensure sustainability and accountability, but most importantly, that the food that is being given to kids is nutritious, but also of good quality. Now that Fru has given us kind of a regional context, we'll now deep dive to a more local context, looking at an example of parent-led models in Mbeya, Tanzania. We are going to hear from Judith Serapion to give us just a glimpse of what is happening in Mbeya. And Judith is a development professional working across nutrition, food systems, and community development. She's worked closely with government, schools, and local communities to support nutrition-sensitive programs, which includes school feeding and urban agriculture. So she really brings that on-the-ground perspective of how these programs actually work. Judith, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Sine. Maybe I share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Judith.
Yes, just like Sine has mentioned, I am Judith Sarapion and I work with the Helvetas Tanzania, implementing the Inclusive Cities for Nutrition project, which is implemented in Mbeya, and it's implemented together with Helvetas and Mbeya City Council, where we are also working to strengthen the school feeding program. Yes, now going through the structure of my presentation and taking you through Mbeya's experience on school feeding program. I'll talk a bit about Mbeya City, for those who don't know about Mbeya City in Tanzania, and the Mbeya school feeding context. And also I'll take you through why did we come to a parent-led school feeding model and how the model actually works, how the model is coordinated, and the stakeholder roles and collaboration, and the impact and outcomes. And I'll take you through the challenges and lessons learned from this school feeding program in Mbeya, and the way forward, as in for the future for the school feeding in Mbeya. And also, lastly, we'll see the pictures and impressions of what we have been doing on the ground. So about Mbeya City, Mbeya is one of Tanzania's major food producing regions, and we call it actually Mbeya is a food basket for Tanzania. And Mbeya, it's a strategic trade and transport hub which links Tanzania, Zambia, and Malawi. And the total population is approximately around 500,000, with Mbeya's economy being driven by agriculture, trade, and agro-processing activities. Yeah, despite strong agricultural production in Mbeya, we still see high level of malnutrition levels, especially the undernutrition, which remains a significant challenge and highlights gaps in terms of food utilization. There is issues of dietary diversity and nutrition practices among Mbeya consumers. So this is why we need to strengthen Mbeya's food systems in ensuring that people and consumers have positive nutrition outcomes. Mbeya school feeding context. Why school feeding matters in Mbeya City? School feeding is actually recognized by the government of Tanzania as a key intervention for education and nutrition. Tanzania does not have a school feeding policy, but we have the school feeding guideline, and also we have the school feeding implementation plan, which came into place in 2023. Many children in Mbeya attend school without adequate meals. So hunger affects attendance, as we know, concentration in learning and nutrition outcomes, and also retention. There's limited government resources, whereby the government cannot provide school meals for all children in all public schools. So we require innovative and sustainable community-based approaches to change the narrative. Now, why parent-led model? School feeding is not a donor program. It's actually a community investment in children's future, and it's a collaborative effort of different key stakeholders. There's a need for a sustainable school feeding approach owned by communities themselves on the ground. And also stakeholder engagement. For example, in Mbeya, we have this IC4N project. As development partners, we have the Mbeya City Council, which is on the driving seat to ensure that school feeding is implemented and it's sustainable. We have schools and also the communities. But also parents are critical actors for sustaining school meals because they should be involved in their children's education. And the model builds on local food systems, community ownership, and shared responsibility of everyone and all the key stakeholders. Now, how the model works, the parent-ready model includes different key stakeholders. Now we have the schools, we have the project, we are the developing partners, but we have parents, we have the local government authority itself. So the schools manage food storage, preparation, and utilization. And this is according to the government guideline on school feeding. And they also coordinate meal preparation and accountability. And this is through the nutrition teachers who are available at schools and are responsible to supervise in ensuring that all children have lunches. But also we have the project, which is IC4N, Inclusive Cities for Nutrition in Mbeya, which is role is to build the capacity and strengthen the capacity of the local government authority, which is Mbeya City Council, but also the schools and the parents. And also we do the coordination role, advocacy, and learning support. But then we have parents. Parents are responsible to contribute to food, either in cash or in kind or labor, depending on how they have set the guideline. I mean, what they have set as the arrangement of each school. We have the local government authority, which plays the oversight, policy guidance, and technical support. And also contributions are agreed through school food committees who are elected by the parents themselves. And the school food committees are responsible to supervise the overall implementation of the school feeding program in the city. Sorry. Now, coordination of the school feeding program. How is school feeding coordination done in Mbeya City? First, we do community sensitization meetings to mobilize and encourage parents to contribute food for school lunches. And this is led by the Mbeya City Council, who is on the driving seat through the City Multi-Sectoral Steering Committee on Nutrition. We also do have the school feeding bylaws, which were developed to strengthen parental participation and accountability, especially those who are able to contribute, but they're kind of ignoring. But then the school feeding bylaws are there to ensure that they contribute food for the children. But we have peer and learning experiences sharing among schools within the community where parents also do participate. We have inter-school competitions, all in order to advocate for school feeding, and also key stakeholders are normally also involved. But we do have regular supportive supervision and follow-up visits to monitor the progress, and this is done by the City Council through the City Multi-Sectoral Steering Committee on Nutrition, coordinated by the City Nutrition Officer, where they do supervise and ensure that the school feeding implementation is done accordingly. And also strengthen the stakeholders' collaboration among local government, schools, parents, NGOs, and private sector do come together to ensure sustainable implementation of the program. But also, we do have advocate for school vegetable gardens establishment and strengthen the school nutrition clubs. These school nutrition clubs, which are available in all the schools, are responsible to ensure that these vegetable gardens are available and the vegetables are integrated into school lunches. Now, these are the roles of stakeholders, different stakeholders in Mbeya City. We have the NGOs, we have the CSOs, and of course the C4N project, whose role is to do the sensitization, to provide technical support, do advocacy issues, and also coordination. The parents, like I mentioned, resource mobilization, meal support, ensure contribution, and also elect school committees. But we have the schools themselves who are responsible for implementation of the overall program and monitoring. They're also accountable and they also do parent mobilization. But also we have the City Council, which is on the driving seat, provides leadership and supervision, local plans, ensuring that local plans and budgets also reflect the school feeding activities, and also parent sensitization. What are the impacts and outcomes from these school feeding programs? I mean, the school feeding program, which started actually in 2022. Now we have observed improved student attendance, enhanced the concentration, participation, and learning outcomes, because they are getting food at schools during school hours. And also there is increased the community ownership of the program. We have strengthened collaboration among local government, schools, parents, and stakeholders, all the key stakeholders that are involved. But there's increased the awareness of healthy diets among students and also parents. We now see that students are demanding health foods at household level, but it has enhanced the school environment through the establishment of school vegetable gardens. Nowadays, all school compounds are supposed to establish vegetable gardens instead of planting flowers. But we have increased the parental commitment and contribution of food, and also improved the sustainability compared to externally supported models, because this is the parent-led model and it is supported by the communities themselves. Now in Mbeya City, we have around 128 public schools, that is 88 primary and 40 public secondary schools. As you can see, about 64% of students in primary schools are having lunch and only 62%. So we still have a lot to do to continue with the sensitization of parents' contribution. But all 100% of schools in Mbeya City do provide school lunches. The difference is the number of students who are getting that lunch. Now, before 2021, when this program started, school feeding in Mbeya was limited to a few schools, and there was actually no guideline. Mainly, the school feeding was benefiting examination classes because of the arrangements between schools and parents. But also stakeholder engagement and collaboration were minimal, and parental contributions were voluntary and not consistently emphasized, resulting in implementation across schools. There was no coordinated school feeding program across the city before 2021. Now, what are the challenges and lessons learned from this school feeding program? Some of the challenges include lack of consistency in the parents' contributions, which leads to delays. They may contribute for 6 months, and then the next 6 months it becomes a challenge. And of course, they say because of the low income, so it becomes a very big challenge. And also students from low-income households are often unable to contribute food for the school feeding program. There's also inadequate school feeding infrastructure, the storage facilities, kitchens, dining halls, and the reliable water supply in our schools. So these are some of the challenges that affect effective implementation of the school feeding program. But what are the lessons learned? We see community ownership is essential for sustainability. And also the local government leadership strengthens implementation, as it oversees the implementation and ensures that the school feeding is in place and is sustainable. There is also continuous engagement with parents, which builds trust and commitment. And the school feeding works best when linked to nutrition education and local food systems. But also there's a need for continuous sensitization and mobilization. This is a continuous process. Now, way forward for school feeding in Mbeya City. The IC4N project, together with Mbeya City Council, we are working to strengthen the capacity of school food committees in planning, budgeting, issues of procurement, and overall management of the school feeding program, but also establish a mechanism to identify and support students from vulnerable households
Okay, we'll give Judith a second or two. I think she might be having a bit of challenges with her internet. Okay, while we wait for Judith to join us again, I think she might be having a bit of challenges with her internet. If there's anyone at this moment, maybe who might have any questions for Fru, just based on the presentation that she's given us, this is your opportunity to ask one or two questions, and then hopefully by then, Judith will be back and we'll continue with her presentation. Happiness,
Hello.
I can see you unmuting. Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon.
Hi, Happiness,
Good
you're coming
afternoon.
through. Yes.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Happiness. Are you able to hear us?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Yes, my name is Happiness from Dar es Salaam. It is my first time to join. Do you hear me?
Yes, you are still coming through.
Yes, it is my first time to join this session. It is very informative to me. I have some add-ons on if something there is no government supervision, its sustainability it is questionable because not all schools are covered by formal government supported uh, 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 school feeding program. So there is a need, great need for government to coordinate the thing, because if it is not supported, strictly supervised by government, the sustainability of the program it's going to be weak. So they need, apart from sensitization, there are the other issues like some schools lack storage facilities. So you may find some availability of food, but without proper storage facilities, maybe clean and safe water, cooking equipment with a good quality, you may end up on maybe challenge of having diseases. So to me, the important thing is the model. What I can opt is the government led, so that they think to be sustainable. Because experience from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, in general, most of the school feeding program is parent-led, community-led. It has a lot of challenges. It is difficult sometimes for some parents to contribute for food. With this extreme poverty to marginalized communities we serve at the villages, so some of the parents may face challenges to contribute for food, for money. So this affects the sustainability of this program specifically in rural area. And another challenge is with weak infrastructures in schools, such as I said, schools, storage facilities, access to clean, safe, water and clean environment during the preparation of this food, it might be difficult for sustainability of this program. So to me, I opt, apart from, I've read the presentation from Judith from Mbeya. There is a success story from the parent-led initiative, but to be successful with this program, we should strengthen legal framework, policies, to have policy in place, rules, guidelines, so that they should support. They should be in place in favor of school programs, so that they think to be sustainable. Thank you for now. Let me end here.
Thank you so much, Happiness. We still will have an opportunity towards the end of the sessions for more questions and more engagement. But I think
Yeah.
you've already kind of started responding to some questions that I had when I joined the session, the question of sustainability. But I think let's park it there for now. We will get a bit of a chance later to continue having this conversation. I can see that Judith is back online, so I'm just going to allow her to finish her presentation. Welcome back, Judith.
Yes, I'm
Please feel
sorry,
free
my
to share
internet
your
went
screen
off.
again. No problem at all. Please feel free to share your screen and continue with where you had left off.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
thank you.
like I was saying, we want to enhance coordination among stakeholders and supportive supervision among local government authorities, schools, and also communities in ensuring effective program implementation. And also, as I see for any project, we are promoting nutrition issues. So we want to promote dietary diversity by incorporating vegetables, fruits, and other nutrient-rich foods into school meals, which are prepared at schools, which we have also started doing by incorporating the vegetables that are grown by the schools themselves. Yeah, so having said that, maybe let's look at the impressions as in what has been happening on the ground in Mbeya. As you can see, students having lunch in schools. That's the provision of health and nutritious meals to students during school hours. But also we are promoting vegetable gardening in schools. That is to increase the integration of fresh vegetables into school meals. We are also advocating for urban agriculture practices. That is even for the schools which do not have bigger spaces, they can still produce the vegetables. We are doing parent sensitization meetings to advocate for the school feeding program, and we do it by demonstrating on how the school lunches should look like you can see in the picture. We are also facilitating peer learning and sharing of experiences through inter-school competitions, but also the nutrition clubs, as you can see. And we are building capacity of school staff, that is nutrition teachers and school cooks, on how to prepare healthy and nutritious meals, which we do demonstrate practically, as you can see in the picture. And as the project, we have also managed to support the city in constructing 3 school model kitchens. That is to support and improve food preparation environment in schools, like you can see. But also through the city council and through its local plans and budgeting, they have been able to budget and provide water storage tanks to schools, at least to a few schools to start with, to support them with water supply. And like I said, these are some of the pictures reflecting the inter-school competitions that is done to advocate for the school feeding program. We are also conducting sensitization meetings, different stakeholders within the city, the leaders, the influential people, religious leaders, all the key stakeholders in order to advocate and support the school feeding program from the grassroots. Yeah, having said that, thank you for listening, and asante sana.
Thank you so much, Judith, for your presentation. I think it was, yeah, for me, really interesting to hear more about the parents-led model. I think just from your presentation as well as Drew's presentation, I'm already starting to kind of see like a common theme on coordination and the importance of shared responsibility, especially for a sustainable school feeding program. And I think it's also for me very interesting to see that even in parent-led models, it does not necessarily mean that the aspects of school gardens is now removed from that, which is now going to draw us nicely into our next speaker, who is going to be sharing examples of school gardens in their context. So we're going to be moving to now a different region, which is Asia. And for that, we are joined by Dr. Mona Lisa Sen, who leads the biodiversity team at ICLEI South Asia, sorry. And she has worked for over 25 years on biodiversity, conservation, climate change, and nature-based solutions in cities across Asia. I'm going to hand over to you, Mona.
Hi, everyone. Are my slides visible?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so I'll talk of a project where we are developing food gardens in government schools. Before that, I'd like to say that India has a policy wherein midday meals are provided to the students in government schools. And these midday meals are not cooked on the school campus. They are cooked by some third party somewhere else, and they're just delivered at the school. So that's the background. And we started this project on developing food gardens in government schools. This is supported by Right Now Climate Fund of Amazon. So the project, like, it aims to build productive green spaces, address food security, promote biodiversity conservation in the schools, and also have implications on the policy framework of urban food security and agriculture. India has a scheme called the PM Poshan, which caters to the midday meal of the schools. So this policy that we want to influence is the PM Poshan policy. So, well, the project progress till now, the project runs across 4 cities in India, 4 mega cities: Delhi, Bangalore, Calcutta, and Hyderabad. So, as of now, we've done 25 gardens in Delhi and 20 in Bangalore. Work in the rest is progressing. Over 24,000 students have access to these gardens, and we have over 97,000 indirect beneficiaries to the gardens. We've also been doing student engagement activities, focusing on farming and as well as harvesting. These gardens grow around 40 species of crops. A policy workshop has already been carried out, and rest is the pipeline. We have been doing biodiversity assessments on quarterly basis in each of the schools, and we have reported 666 species from Delhi, the schools that I'm talking of, 524 species from Bangalore, and 150 from schools in Calcutta. So these are the kind of structures that we do. Some of them are covered on the top, like you see the first photograph and the third photograph. Some of them are open on the top. That's the middle photograph. The various kinds of vegetables that we have been growing. Some of the gardens, basically that's Bangalore. They're also rooftop gardens. So you see a photograph of a rooftop garden as well. The photograph on the right-hand corner shows how typical garden in Delhi looks like. This is some of the harvest we have. That's one of the other typical gardens that they look like. This is the kind of engagement activities we've been doing with students, wherein they do a lot of seeding and some amount of watering. These kids are very small, so we can't have them pull big pipes to water, but small amount of watering they do. But they're very, very active in seeding, and then they come and see how much their plant has grown. And the produce is distributed amongst children. You see one of the photographs with a lot of children there who have taken the produce with them. There's another, there are various schools in various times that these harvests have happened, and we've been distributing them amongst the children. photographs of the different kind of produces that we have been doing. Sometimes the school also cuts out the vegetables as salad and distributes it among the children. This is one of the photographs of that. We've also been doing a lot of engagement activities within classrooms. So this is a photograph of draw your favorite vegetable, and you see the kids have drawn different kinds of things. This is when they take produce home. This is the photographs of that they send us of what they have cooked, rather their parents have cooked, out of the produce that they have taken home. Some of the issues, one of the biggest issue is monkey menace. You see the kind of tearing the monkey has done in our green net. So finally, we had to put aluminium nets all over. That's how the last two photographs show. And now at least our gardens are safe from monkeys. Hailstorms are another issue. Trees fall, they fall on our gardens. So we've had to redo gardens several times because of these tree falls. Just can't stop them. This just happens. And with climate change coming in, these thunderstorms have become much more frequent, and the risk of things falling on our gardens is very high. This is the policy workshop. This is the first one that we have done in Bangalore, wherein we had about 30 people, and we discussed things around how these gardens can be institutionalized into the everyday mechanism of the school so that these gardens are sustainable even after the project ends. And well, future works remain biodiversity surveys, trainings, and the remaining gardens. So this in a nutshell was the project, and I'm happy to provide answers to any questions or take any comments.
Thank you so much, Mona, for your presentation. I think it was interesting for me, or rather, it was a nice reminder, that school feeding is not just about nutrition, just also seeing the school children being involved and that environmental awareness around them. I think it was, quite a nice thing to see. I'm now going to open up the conversation for any questions you might have for Mona, for Judith, for Fru, just based on what you've heard. Doesn't necessarily have to be questions. If you have comments or any reflections, please feel free to either type it in the chat or unmute and go for it. Okay, maybe while we wait, I think Happiness raised quite a few nice points, about frameworks and policies and so on. And it got me wondering, and this is a question for all our speakers today. So Fru, Judith, Mona, any of you are free to unmute and just respond. At least from your context, who would you say hasn't been engaged enough in the conversation? Who's missing in this bigger picture to ensure that school feeding programs are sustainable now and will be sustainable in the next coming years?
Okay, I'll go first. School feeding programs in India are very sustainable now. That's a policy of the national government that we have. What is not sustainable is that the schools themselves have food gardens and the produce from here goes into the meals. That is what has still not worked out, even though on paper this is there in our, like I said, the PM Portion scheme, but it's not worked out. So that is the area that we wanted to try and work on and build in sustainability of these gardens. So the biggest issue that these schools face is that they have both financial and technical capacity lacking with regards to developing these gardens. So they work on a very stringent budget. They don't have extra money. Plus, they don't have manpower to do these gardens. So the school feeding program is very well institutionalized in India. What is lacking is the food gardens becoming a part of it. And that's where the national government comes into a big play, because in India, food is a national subject, not a city subject.
Hello.
Judith, through any reflections? Oh, Agnes, I can see that you have unmuted. Do you have a
Yeah.
question?
Yes,
Senior,
thank you. My name
Okay,
is
well,
Agnes
oh,
Mahembe.
Agnes, and then we'll go through. Over to you,
Yes,
Agnes.
hello. Yes, I'm Agnes Mahembe. I work also for Helvetas. I work together with Judith. My contribution is on the importance of different stakeholders, importance of linking different stakeholders into school meals programs. Yeah, maybe this is to react from happiness, what she has said. I'm totally agreeing with her that, of course, the local government authority should be in the driving seat for the sustainability, that because they are there to influence the policy implementation, but also to influence the use of the bylaws. However, we should not leave out the other stakeholders surrounding the school feeding program. Yes, I agree that the parent-led or the community-led model, it's a key for sustainability. However, for this parent-led model to be sustainable, there is a need of other stakeholders, because we all know that, yes, the government has the will and is there to ensure that school feeding program is sustained, but the funding, the resources, the government has many other priorities, so there is no much resources that is dedicated for the school feeding program. So it's where now the need for other stakeholders to come in. So it's not only the community, the parents, but also the civil society organizations, the NGOs, but also we should not leave out the private sector. We have this private sector, like the business people whom are into food, so they can also have some roles into the school feeding program, but not leaving out the farmers surrounding the schools, because they are producers, but also they have a big contribution into the school feeding programs, where you find parents contributes money or contributes food, but now when there is money, where to source the food for the school feeding program. So we see that also the farmers surrounding the schools are also key into the school feeding program. So my main point here is that for the sustainable school feeding program, it is important that different stakeholders are linked to contribute into the school feeding program. Thank you.
Thank you for that reflection, Agnes. I know before you had jumped in, Fru had unmuted. Fru, I'm going to give you an opportunity to also share your reflections.
yeah, just to echo what Agnes said, like in most of these discussions that we have around school feeding, we realize that private sectors are left out. And therefore, we also need to bring them into this conversation because they also have a great role to play. They can either contribute financially or they can also provide support. Like when we had the pilot intervention in Kitiwe, Zambia, we invited someone from the private sector, right? And he gave us tips on what we can do to be able to get funding from big companies, which was something that we did not know. So involving them in our conversation will also help us to be able to know the right channel and how to approach the private sectors when it comes to financing this program. And then also echoing that we should also remember that initially when the issue around school feeding started, it was more or less like curbing hunger, improving education of children. But now there is that gradual shift that, oh no, school feeding can do beyond just curbing hunger and improving the education of children. It has a systematic effect in terms of the local economy, in terms of the environment. And that is why now we are seeing the gradual shift now, not only focusing on education and the well-being of the children, but also what it has on on the community. And that is why now we are having the different stakeholders now coming on board, where we are involving the Department of Agriculture, we are involving the Department of Environment, people are involved with climate, and we also have now the Education Department, the national government now coming in, and all of that. That's because we have seen now that the school feeding has a brings about systematic change. So while we are pushing forward on that, we also need governments to also come in with laws that will help to strengthen the implementation of this program.
Thank you for that reflection, Fru. Jokudo, I see that your hand is raised. I'm gonna pass over to you.
Thanks, Ne. I really like the point that Fru just highlighted right now, and I think what it brings out for me is the diagram that she showed earlier, which had an overview of the different ways in which various stakeholders can be involved to ensure that a collaborative or multi-stakeholder approach is taken. And unfortunately, I see that Mona has just gone off to take a quick call. But my question was mainly to hear from her in the Asian context, whether multi-stakeholder approaches are also beneficial and whether they have informed the process that she has taken. So hopefully she can answer that when she's able to speak again.
Thanks. Thanks for that reflection, Chukuru. I'm going to double check if there's anyone else on the call who might have a question before I pose another question.
So this is Mwaka
Okay,
from
Mwaka.
Zambia Kitwe. I've been following the discussion and I couldn't agree more. There is need for collaboration among different stakeholders. Having worked in a market before as a market manager, I was able to observe quite a number of food waste. And probably if we were to sit down and, have these discussions at that level, we would really also reduce on this food waste and also see how we can, supplement some of these school meals in the different towns, cities, and even peri-urban areas. So that's my contributions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mwaka, for that contribution. There's no one else. I'm going to pose a question. I don't see any raised hands. And this is a question for unmuting. Happiness, please go ahead.
Yes, I once again thank you very much for bringing this topic. It is very needed in this era. I want to raise another issue, could bring issue of discussion or question: to what extent climate change and the agricultural shocks affect school feeding programs in both ways, in both models, government-led model or parent-led model or community-led model, that the climate change and the agricultural shocks affect school feeding program. Thank you.
Thanks, Happiness. Was that question specifically to someone, or was that more of a reflection?
It is just a more for a reflection. It's just a matter of discussion to all of the participants, not directed to a specific person or presenter.
If there's anyone in the audience who's happy to, yes, Fru.
Is Happiness, your voice was faint, but correct me if I'm wrong, just to understand the question. Are you asking how climate change impact on school feeding?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, climate change, remember, climate change also impact the way we produce, or the way we produce impact on climate, right? And that is why now you see that there's that campaign on around regenerative agriculture. And the reason for that is because we want to produce in a way that is sustainable, in a way that does not impact on our environment, because our environment, when being impacted or polluted, has an impact on the food we produce. And therefore, yes, climate change has an impact on school feeding, because school feeding is food that we are giving to children. And therefore, if we don't produce in a sustainable way, the sustainability of that program also is questionable. And that's why there is that shift now to regenerative school meals or agroecology practices. If you have been following issues around school meals, you realize that there is that campaign now that people now, or farmers, should move now to a regenerative method of production. And that's because of the issue of climate change. I
Thank you
hope that
for that.
answers your question.
Thank you for that response, Fruit Chokuru. I see your hand is up.
Maybe to make a connection between the point that Fru has just noted around the importance of regenerative practices, I think um, building on um, building on what Judith had presented earlier, the idea of connecting to local food systems as well is also very important there, because if you are producing food or supplying children with food that is locally grown, that means that there is the opportunity there to make those linkages with whatever is changing within the environment and being able to be adaptive in that sense. And so that's where you also then start building those ideas of like locally driven economies, but also again the importance of this being, yes, parents are important in driving these systems, but the points that Happiness was raising, which is government also needs to play a critical role here in supporting the initiatives and the drive that local government brings into the table, because they are the ones that have not only access to like resources and beyond, but have the ability to then help schools with the pivot that is needed when there are climate shocks, such as flooding is taking place, or we're going through a drought season. How can they then step in or build systems to help adjust in those processes, and how can the policies be designed to make room for those changes as well, I think is something important to incorporate in the models that are designed, which goes back again to Fru's point around multi-stakeholder engagement in building school feeding programs.
Thanks, Chukuru. I see that Samson is on the call, and I'm tempted to put him in on the spot just a bit, especially as someone who works a lot on school feeding programs as well in Entebbe. I'm wondering, Samson, just from this conversation that we have had today, if you would like to share any maybe insights on the work that has been done in Entebbe on school feeding programs. Are you with us, Samson? Can see you.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes. Good afternoon, and thank you for this engagement. And I've had the contribution about Mbale in Uganda, and Uganda is a food basket, if I could say that. We have very, very good climate and weather, and we grow quite a lot of food. But another factor that is affecting the school feeding programs is that government supports the schools. They give us a budget, so the schools go out and buy the food. But the challenge is that the schools buy the food from the same market. So the prices affect how much food and the quality of food that the schools can get. And so many other factors, the infrastructure. Times the roads are so bad, like in Mbale where we had a report. The roads can be so bad and you can't get the food to the markets, or then when they get there, it's very expensive. So much as we have a lot of food, we produce a lot of food year round because we have 2 seasons in the year. The food can be very expensive, which limits how much we can deliver to the schools. So besides having the government support and being an agro-based economy, other factors come in and can affect the way you feed the children in the schools. That's maybe what I had to contribute, but thank you. I'm enjoying the conversation.
Thank you so much for your contribution, Samson. I just picked up when you were speaking on the point on affordability, and it made me think of Judith's presentation as well when she was speaking about affordability, and it made me have a question. This is for you, Judith, especially like a parent-led model, because it also means that parents need to contribute in some sense. And you did mention affordability as a challenge, especially for low-income households. How do you then ensure that no child is then left behind, even in cases where some children maybe are coming from households where parents are not able to contribute towards the school feeding program? Do you have any measures to ensure that even though maybe a parent is unable to afford, but that the child is still able to get a meal at school?
Yeah, thank you, Sine, for raising such an issue. I think, like I mentioned before, that we are working to ensure that we first of all want to assess the number of students or pupils who are unable to access meals because of their family background, as in coming from poor households. And in Tanzania, we have Tanzania Social Action Fund, TASAF, which is a fund that supports families who are, let's say, needy and poor, those who cannot be able to access some of the social services. But we are trying to do the assessment then, and this was the request from the parents themselves, to see the number of students that are unable to contribute and see how they can be integrated in the very same school feeding program that is going on, where others are able to contribute. So after we do the assessment, then we will sit down and put down measures on how we are able to support these kinds of children so that they are not also left behind because of their family background. And this is in collaboration with the city council itself and also the project. Yeah. I hope
Thank
I
you
have
so much,
answered.
Judith. Yes, thank you. I'm just reading what's coming through in the chat. It's just a comment from Happiness saying that Mbeya City is one of the G5, meaning the high potential regions, food production in Tanzania. They also produce a lot of food, and that's why there is a high rate of malnutrition. I'm just going to double check if we have any other questions from the audience. Thoughts, reflections, questions.
Okay, Sine, thank you. Maybe just respond on why in Mbeya City there's high rate of malnutrition, given that it's a food basket for Tanzania, one of the regions that produces food. Like I mentioned before during my presentation, there is a lot of food in Mbeya, but then how it is consumed and lack of knowledge on dietary diversity. Yeah, that's a challenge. So there's the need to continue sensitization on nutrition education, on what people should eat, what type of food are they eating, because we just eat because the food is available, but the type of food that we are eating, then that's a problem. So there's the need to continue to educate people on consumption issues. That's the challenge of Mbeya. There is food, but we still have high levels of malnutrition, especially in under 5 children.
I'm also wondering, Judith, as you're speaking, when you were providing the food to the kids in the schools, is the nutritional content something that you ensure, or is it more of we are trying to ensure that there's food in the kids' stomach? Or how much do you consider the nutrition elements of the food that you provide to the kids?
Yeah, thank you. Looking at what parents are contributing, initially, we wanted to see at least some percentage of students are having lunch at school. Then after pupils have lunch, from there you can think about nutrition, but at least their stomach is not empty at first, which was not there before. Like I mentioned, initially only examination classes used to have lunch at schools and not all of them. But then we came out with this initiative of school feeding program in ensuring that all students have food at school. So the parents are contributing staple foods. Then after we saw that at least the percentage is rising, we started advocating for nutritious meals. As I presented, as you can see in the pictures, at least nowadays or now, you can see that the food is incorporated with vegetables, but we have other types of foods that's also incorporated in the school meals, at least to ensure the nutrition issue is also observed. Although we haven't gotten there to the extent that we want, but at least something is being done currently. Yeah.
Thank you for that comment, Judith. I can see that Fru's hand is up, so I'm going to pass over to you, Fru.
I wanted to add to what Judith echoed around why there is high rate of malnutrition in Mbeya. We should also understand that malnutrition is a multifaceted issue. It's caused by many things. And availability of food does not determine whether people will be malnourished or not. There are other different factors in terms of access. And access, we have like the physical access, the social access, and the economic access. And in most cases, people don't have the economic access to healthy food or sometimes a physical access. And the way we utilize our food, that is when the issue around water, sanitation, and hygiene comes in. How do you handle your food also determines whether you will be malnourished or not, and the stability. So there are different factors other than the availability of food that impacts on the nutritional state of people, which is something we should also bear in mind, the causes of malnutrition.
Hello.
Jokuru, then Agnes.
Okay, no problem. So actually, thank you, Fru, for that insight. And what it was prompting for me was Samson mentioned something similar around like different factors that lead to challenges around like undernutrition or malnutrition in contexts where it seems as though access to food should not be a challenge because the ability to produce food seems to be quite high. So I was then maybe just wondering, Samson, in addition to the point that you had highlighted earlier, is there anything that has been tried within your context to address the specific challenges that you experience? Because you noted that on your end, it comes from like the challenge of actually getting the food to schools, if I understood correctly, or it was around the procurement processes or the governance processes in the delivering of school feeding programs.
Yeah, what I can say, the government is deliberately constructing markets, even in urban areas, agricultural markets actually, and is subsidizing the cost of the food because the markets are government owned, so the vendors pay very little fees to participate in the markets, and then they can store their food for longer times. So the shelf life of the food is improved, so the farmers can afford to subsidize their produce as well, so that even the schools can get can get the food at affordable prices. And there is also deliberate promotion of the urban farming and the school farming. Most of the schools now have the vegetable farms, especially the vegetable farms, so that at least they can produce the vegetables by themselves. That lowers the cost of feeding the children significantly. And also there is a campaign of renewable energy. We're using a lot of renewable energy to produce the food. The schools are going away from firewood and charcoal, and they are being encouraged to use electricity, which makes environment sense, but also the electricity is becoming cheaper by the day. The government is lowering the rates of hydroelectricity so that even the schools and other facilities can afford using electricity, which is more reliable and cleaner in the process. But also, there are other factors that are still challenging the cost. For instance, now the cost of fuel, even the wars outside of the country, because once the price of the fuel goes up per liter, then several things are going to become more expensive. So you find also that the costs will be reflected in the feeding of the children. So already the food is much more expensive on the market because of the cost of the rising cost of fuel. So it's a mix of challenges. Some of them are manageable at the local level. Some of them are not manageable at the local level. Yep.
Thank you for that reflection, Sam. So I'm just conscious about time. Agnes, I know you had your mic unmuted, so I'm gonna let you ask the question or reflect before I hand over to our speakers for final reflections, then we close the session. So over to you, Agnes.
Thank you. I just wanted to emphasize on the issues of access to food, especially in the regions where food is produced in large quantities like in Mbeya. So the issue, when we speak of the vulnerable households, low-income households in Mbeya City that cannot afford to contribute food for the school feeding program. Actually, the situation is even worse, especially when we speak of the Mbeya City, because it is an urban setting where majority does not produce, but now it's better maybe at the rural settings where majority are producing. So the access of the basic foods, like the staples, it is easier. But in town setting, in urban setting, speaking of the access of even staple, it is actually it is difficult. So speaking of the vulnerable households who cannot access food, it is a big problem because everyone needs to work to earn money so that they can buy food. So these households whom cannot afford having a work to earn some money to buy food, actually they are struggling. So that's why we have indicated that this is a big problem for these children coming from the low income households because they are really struggling given the urban setting. So I wanted just to highlight this, so when we talk about this challenge, actually we refer to the city, to the urban setting, where the issue of low income household to food security is an issue. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Agnes, for that reflection. I'm going to move back to our speakers for closing reflections. I see that we have 3 minutes left before we need to close the session. So to each of the speakers, I have the same question. So we'll start through Judith and then Mona. So my question to you as a final reflection, looking ahead, if we were to reconvene this conversation again in 5, 10 years, what is one thing you would most hope to see in your school feeding systems, especially in the context in which you are in? So we'll go through Judith and Mona.
The one thing I want to see is collaboration across the different departments. We need collaboration from the designing of the program right down to the implementation of the program to ensure that there is no misalignment with the needs on the ground.
Thank you, Fru. Judith, your one thing.
Yeah, I would say that school feeding is a collaborative effort. Like all stakeholders, the key stakeholders need to be engaged. When we talk about, for example, the parent-led model, does not mean that only parents should be involved, but all key stakeholders, the government has the role, other key stakeholders, including the private sector, who has not been so much engaged. Their engagement has been a bit limited, so they also need to be engaged in order to actually strengthen the all issues of food systems, not only school feeding, but also the whole issue of food systems. When everyone is on board, then school feeding program will be sustainable.
Thanks, Judith. Mona?
5 years down the line, I would like to see more schools in India who have cooking facilities on campus and they have food gardens from which they are taking the produce and making the midday meals.
Thank you so much to Fru, Mona, and Judith for your very insightful presentations today. I think the one word that I'm coming out with today from this conversation is collaboration. I think that was emphasized quite a lot. Just the importance of having all decks and having everyone participate to ensure sustainability. Thank you also to everyone who asked questions, shared reflections, and anyone who just was here today to listen in. I hope this was a session that was insightful for you as much as it was for me. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully, we will see you in our next session. Our next session is going to be held on the 22nd of June. I'll share a link and an invitation to everyone who's here today, and that's going to be focusing on social protection. We'll have an example from a Brazilian city and also an example from a South African city. Thank you so much once again. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.